Welcome to How to Ruin Your Own Reputation, the show where I talk to people who are living lives that some people don't quite understand, and they're doing it unapologetically. I firmly believe that even though the details of our stories are unique to us, there are often themes running through them that can connect so many of us if we're just willing to listen. Today's topic is one that I have found to be quite polarizing at times. I say that because when I've talked about it on different platforms, it can bring up some feelings for people. And that topic is masculinity, both toxic and positive. And I think the reason why the term toxic masculinity is offensive to some people is because they confuse it. I think people think that toxic masculinity is a criticism towards men, and it's not. It's a criticism of a system that is doing a disservice to men and is harming men as much as it's harming the rest of us. And I think that's why it's so important that we talk about it. So I'm very much looking forward to this conversation with my guest today, McGregor, who is a transgender activist, author, speaker. He is the founder and executive director of positivemasculinitynow.org, which we are going to talk about, and the author of the book, Positive Masculinity. Also worth mentioning, Mac was the first transgender person to have their name on a ballot running for city council in the state of Washington. I think that was in 2017. And I think that's pretty cool. So let's just dive right in because I'm diving into this. Welcome, Mac, to How to Ruin Your Own Reputation.
Thank you, Marcy. So glad to be here. And I just love the title. It's just fun.
It's suiting. It's just, yeah, this is what I want. I want people who aren't afraid to say, this is me, and listen up. Maybe you can learn a little something. So here's what I'm not going to ask you. I am not going to ask you to define masculinity because I think that is a big problem. I think it's because we have had it defined for us in ways that are not based in reality, not factual, dangerous, and harmful. But what I am going to ask you, just to start, is, so like I said at the beginning, there's toxic masculinity and then there's positive masculinity. And your goal is to take us from the former to the latter. Right. And so what do you think? I mean, we'll get into it deeper, but just to start, how would you define the two and what's missing to get us from toxic to positive?
Well, I think kind of like the book there, 50 Shades of Gray in between, right?
Mm-hmm.
For one thing, those are like the binary, toxic and positive, right? And then there's a lot to get from the one to the other. So I believe anything can become toxic, first of all. One of the things I do in the book is I define the difference between traditional masculinity and toxic masculinity. For instance, someone might have traditional values. If they keep them to themselves and just run their own life that way, that's not toxic to everyone else, right? But if I try to push those traditional beliefs on others and treat others differently if they don't align with my traditional values, that is where traditional becomes toxic, right? So I think it's important to define the difference. And then positive masculinity is a more open and inclusive masculinity, even to those who identify as masculine. I would say the old form of masculinity wasn't even inclusive to all men. Because if men didn't align in a certain way, if they weren't the tough guy, the stoic guy, right? If they were more artsy or intellectual, or they actually were in touch with their feelings, of course, they got policed by other men.
And that's kind of that's the difference, I think, is between gender characteristics and gender expectations. So you have certain characteristics that were put on us. Boys behave this way and girls behave that way. So and that's not factual. That was just, it came up and that's what people decided it was going to be. So then the expectation is that if you are a boy, you are going to act this way. And if you are a girl, and then if you don't, then you're not, something's wrong. You're doing something wrong.
That's what that's what we call social conditioning. It's the gender norms of your community or your society. What do they mean when they say to a little girl, act like a lady?
I still don't act like a lady and I'm 52.
Good for you. But basically what that's telling a young girl is you're not lining up with those expectations, those, the way we want you to, right? You're not staying in your lane. so to say. Same thing when they say to a little boy, man up or toughen up, you might be showing too many feelings that they aren't comfortable with.
Yeah, how damaging it is to be a full and complete human being.
That's right. One of the, I think, really important things for us to remember, Bell Hooks, I'm sure you know of Bell Hooks and her work, but one of the things she said that I found so interesting is the first victim of toxic masculinity and the patriarchy are young boys. And that's because right away they're told, you can't be fully human. Like you said, you have to tamp down a lot of yourself to fit into this mold. It's very limiting.
It's so interesting too, because when you talk about that, and it is often around feelings, and boys can't show feelings, but we all have feelings. So they're not saying you can't have feelings, because we've seen politically, we've seen men have feelings, and it's coming out as anger. They don't realize that anger is a feeling. Right. But I think a lot of it looks like anger, but I think it's sadness can look like anger, and insecurity can look like anger. All these feelings that you have, because they're not allowed to express it in the kind of usual way, it comes out as anger. And for some reason, when women get angry, we're being emotional. But when men get angry, they're just being men. And it's such a weird...
It is.
And one thing I learned when I was going to schools with my body image stuff is I remember just learning that boys feel just as deeply as girls do. They're just not given the vocabulary or the support or the encouragement to show it. And it comes out in different ways. Now, it still comes, girls will say, I don't feel good about myself, but a boy his grades will be bad. He might turn to substance abuse. It's because they still feel it, but we're not letting them express it.
Right. The boys are allowed to express it in physical ways. Like one of the things I did growing up, I poured myself into sports, right? Which that's a place where you're allowed to show aggressiveness, right? And it's celebrated even. So you think about that kind of warrior mentality just feeds that. You're allowed to be aggressive, assertive, angry, frustrated. It's that emotion, or you're high-fiving your buddies, you're celebrating. Those are the two acceptable emotions, right?
And then you have to leave it on the field, leave it wherever that is. And then it's very stunting. And then you think about, I don't even know if they still do it now. I haven't been in a toy store in a long time. You go into a toy store and you've got the blue section and the pink section, and you're telling. So again, like you said, right from a very young age, you're saying this is what's right for you. Yeah. And this is what's right. And you know that a little girl is supposed to go in, because the pink section has the dolls and the kitchen stuff, and the boy section has the building stuff and the cars. It's like, well, what about it just having a car section and a building section? No kidding. And then letting the kids decide it's so weird that we grow up in a society that tells us just be you and be whoever you want to be. But then it tells us it's exactly who we're supposed to be.
Yeah. Just right? You, but stay in these very narrow lanes we've created.
Yeah. I know. I say that all the time. Just be you as long as it's comfortable for me. Just be you.
And that can vary according to even regional. Because I grew up in the Bible Belt in the South, where it was much more confining. Those gender expectations were really strict. Right? Mm. And now I live in Seattle, where it's much more open. I've never thought I would see growing up where I did in the Bible Belt in the South. When I moved here in Seattle, I saw men, you know how they wrap the infant, a lot of women wrap the infant to their chest and walk around. Mm-hmm. Men do that here in Seattle. And I think it's absolutely beautiful. But that's something even that men are taught, you're not supposed to be the nurturer. That's a woman's job. To the point that affects the relationship between a father and his children, that a lot of men feel shame about actually showing that their nurturing side in public. That's awful.
And to further prove that point, why there are so many men's washrooms in public places that don't have changing tables. Right. Because you're just assuming that the father is never going to be out with their baby alone. Because, right. Oh my God, they don't know what to do. They're napped, they can't change a diaper, or they don't want to. So it's something that is so ingrained in us, in everything, that it's become white noise. Like, I think that people who aren't affected by it really don't get why it's such a big thing. And a lot of white men are going to feel very attacked right now. Listen, there's privilege. And I don't care who's listening, there's absolutely privilege that comes with being a white male. 100%. Yes. But the last thing I would want is for a white boy growing up to feel like they can't tell somebody when they're struggling, that they can't tell somebody if they are struggling with something, because I don't want them to be told, what do you have to worry about? Like, to have a man not feel like they can say, I'm having a hard time here. I feel like I'm drowning. And to have someone say, come on, you have it so easy. I think that's really dangerous. And
It
so I
is.
think it's a tough time we hear you. We don't, but it's also, okay, we're hearing you a lot. Like maybe you don't need, it's a really
It's
tough thing.
you bring up an interesting point because when I started this, it's been about 4.5 years ago now. I started it as a men's discussion group once a month, and we created a safe container for men and masculine people to come together and talk about these things and do introspective work. And there were some guys that expressed that. You're telling us, Mac, to be in touch with our feelings and to communicate more. But there's a whole lot of the world that doesn't want to hear from us right now because people are tired of the patriarchy and that has many times put other groups of people down, including women and LGBTQ folks. And we could go on and on, right? One of the things I've taught them is about discernment. It's about discernment. It's about understanding where and when to talk about it. And I think that, and not to talk over other people if they're sharing something. That's the other thing, to be conscious of where you are in the environment and have good discernment about it. Because there are people who care. And the highest suicide rate is among middle-aged white men, actually white men. And I think that's because of wearing these man masks that everybody's been told to wear for so long. And you get to middle age and you're like, they told me I'd be successful and everything would be great if I wore these masks. And now I feel empty. I don't have close friendships because of the messaging. I don't have good intimate relationships because I'm not a good communicator and I'm not in touch with my feelings. So you feel empty. Even one of the messages in masculinity that I think even keeps men from having close friendships is the fact that we always have to be competitive. It's the king of the hill mentality all the time, which keeps men from collaborating more, which means even in a male to male friendship, I'm always looking at you as I have to conquer you in some way because it's always competitive, right? And that is just a crazy message that we have to compete 24/7 to be king of the hill. That's exhausting.
It's almost like you're not enough if you're not the most.
Yes. Yeah. That's totally the message. Or honestly, it's something we can learn from women. So much better at having friendships where you actually share what's really going on and give each other emotional support. And the women in our lives, in men's lives, are tired of being our only emotional support. We need to also have friends. Yeah, we need to also have those kind of friendships that can share that load and be there.
No, you're right, because I think that is something that's put on women, is that we are supposed to fix the men in our lives. We're supposed to be the fixers. And it's like, listen, we're fixing ourselves. Like, we're doing the work. We'll be here for you, but you got to do some work on
That's right.
some work on your own. But there is that thing where I just spoke with somebody else recently, and she was saying that women are supposed to be seen as givers, human givers, not human beings. And that's the thing too. It's, we're all human beings and we all have responsibility to take control of ourselves, but we should all feel safe in doing so. And I do think that it's such a crazy world where, as I said earlier, men are criticized for showing any emotion, but so are women. We're expected to, but we're also criticized if we show, like, it's just, people are afraid of feelings, and It's so crazy. I don't understand because we all have them. It's so weird. And I say all the time too, we push them down. It doesn't make them disappear. It just pushes them to where they do the most damage.
That's right. And then it'll come out in our health, or it'll come out in the way we take it out on our family, where we get snippy or we get short with people. It definitely comes out. And sometimes it comes out in anger, unfortunately. We see that with domestic violence and all the violence that we see in the world. So it's just not healthy for any of us to stuff all that down. Brene Brown says we are emotional beings who can think, who have the ability to think. And I think a lot of people, especially men, want to think we are intellectual beings who have these emotions that tag along. No, actually, we're emotional beings.
What I find is so funny too is I remember I used to love watching the Super Bowl when I was a kid, and I used to really get in touch with, I'd watch their backstories, and I'd pick my team based on who had a more interesting upbringing, like sadder, and who am I going to root for. And then you see at the end, the team that loses, they're sobbing. These men and the people watching the game. So it's almost like that's okay, like you said, with sports. Yeah. You're allowed to get really emotional, but if you're watching a movie,
that's right.
Then you can't. But yeah.
That appropriate area, right? You have to do it.
Exactly. That makes, as long as it doesn't make anyone else uncomfortable, bro. If you're crying during football, okay. But oh my God, you're crying during like a Meryl Streep movie. I can't handle it. So I want to ask you something, and you let me know if it's okay.
Sure.
But you said you grew up in the Bible Belt, and I know that you were assigned female at birth.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering, and you talked about how growing up in the Bible Belt, how it was the stereotypical expectations of gender were even more. So how do you find your way?
Oh, I have had such a wild, interesting journey. My mom had me when she was 16, and so my grandparents helped take care of me when I was younger. I would have probably been a foster kid if they weren't there, and I'm very grateful for them. They were wonderful. But I had also no exposure because of growing up in the Bible Belt to the LGBTQ plus community. I had zero exposure to that. So at 4 years old, and this was back in the 1960s, okay? So at 4, no internet, no way to find community any other way, right? At 4 years old, all I knew how to explain is my given name that was very Southern Belle didn't fit me. So I just started changing my name, playing with other kids. And so to a masculine name. I knew who I was very young. And so these little kids would come knock on my grandparents' door. Now, you may be too young to remember this show unless you watch Nick at Night.
All right.
My papa and I used to watch Gunsmoke together.
Sure.
So I told all the kids my name was Matt Dillon, who was the sheriff on Gunsmoke. So they thought
this is 4 years old. This is like 4 years.
4 years old.
Wow.
So my grandparents thought it was adorable when kids would come knock on the door and ask if Matt Dillon could come out and play. And I wore my little scooters and my little cowboy boots. I didn't know how else to express it because also the word transgender wasn't even around yet. I was too young to understand that, even if it was. I just, this fit me better than what they gave me.
Wow. And they were fine with it. Like they weren't thinking anything either, though. They just thought, how cute.
Yeah, it was cute. And when someone born female is young, you can be a tomboy and that's cute, right? It's when you get older, you start hitting puberty and everything. Everybody expects you to put on your dress and go to church and be a good little girl.
Wow. Yeah. But you also made it very far in martial arts.
I made it about as far as you can go. Yeah. I started martial arts at 6. And I always say that was my soulmate because I don't know where I'd be without it. And it just gave me this healthy place to put my energy. I was a kid with a lot of energy. Also allowed me to be very strong physically and express more of who I was. I wasn't expected to wear a dress in the martial art. I wasn't expected to be soft and demure and all that stuff. And I could
absolutely.
Yeah. So at 17, I won the U.S. fighting title. And then it opened up a lot of doors for me to travel the world, basically travel all over the country and then the world and compete. And guess what? I got out of the Bible Belt and found out there are more queer people out there. Only one.
Wow. Oh, that's so true. It's so true. When you're traveling the world now, you're meeting a lot of different people. So that must have been, that must have been the feeling that you must have had of seeing people and going, oh, there's like this feeling of connection must have been pretty powerful.
It is. I mean, I think if you're different in any way and you for a while are in a small community, think you're the only one, once you get out and see more people, like you're doing your show on, people going their own way, their own path. When you get out and find you're not the only one that's going to do that or doing that, it's, oh, good. I have some camaraderie here. I have some people that understand.
Well, absolutely. Because if you feel like you have to pave the way all by yourself, and then all of a sudden you say, oh my God, there's other people to help me do it.
Yeah.
That is a little less daunting.
It is a lot less daunting. Yeah. Yeah. So then I had an interesting journey because the U.S. karate team, the Olympic Committee wouldn't have allowed me to compete had I started medical transition, even though I knew who I was. I started doing research on it and everything, but I have really good genetics and was able to compete at that level till I was 39.
Oh, wow. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. In fact, I had 18, 19-year-olds on the U.S. karate team calling me the grandparent of the team at the time because I was the oldest male or female on the team. And I won 2 medals in the world championships when I was 39. And I looked at my clock and I said, this is a good time to go out on top. And I retired. Yeah.
Wow.
So then I started my transition journey. Yeah. Yeah, it would get such a rare opportunity to get to do what I was doing. Not only the top 100 athletes in any sport really get that rare opportunity. I have no regrets for doing that. And one of the interesting things I tell people all the time is I got to live my first 40 years walking through the world as what the world saw as female, even though I knew how I felt inside. So I experienced sexism. I fought for women's rights as an athlete because we got less than the guys' team for everything. So that's where I started my activism work. And so I think all that experience has made me a far better man.
100%. I mean, I just listening to that, it makes so much sense. I mean, we always say if you can walk a mile, but you walked more than a mile.
Yeah, I walked a lot of miles.
Yeah, but seriously, to have that inside perspective is pretty amazing, and to be able to bring that to a group. So, okay, I want to talk about your organization for a second, the positivemasculinitynow.org. So who is that for? What kind of stuff I know you have meetings, you have events. How does that work?
Yeah, we have the virtual online discussion group once a month. And that is for anybody who identifies masculine. We have a different subject like this. We just had it this week. And our subject was, we did a core values assessment test. And we talked about how you can use your core values to help you in everyday life. Once you know what your core values are, we talk about life, things that help you do better in life. We're trying to create better humans, actually. We're just trying to help these guys be better humans.
Yeah.
Yeah. We even talked a couple of months ago about intimacy in the masculine and what are the barriers to healthy intimacy for masculine people. And that was such an interesting conversation. Yeah. To get men to talk about intimacy, not in a way of bragging about conquest or crap like that, but to talk about healthy intimacy and what holds us back from having that in our lives. It's about looking within, not looking out. It's not blaming someone else. It's about what are our barriers.
Yeah. Do you think it's harder for men to talk to men about that than it is for them to talk to women, or is it harder the other way? What would be tougher?
I had a friend who's a life coach and who's facilitated a lot of things join us for that meeting, and he was blown away at the openness of the conversation. I think we've created a safe container where at the beginning of every meeting, I say, our focus is to be here to help foster one another's growth. So whatever you want to say, check in with yourself and make sure that's the intent of what you're saying, or don't say it. So we don't put each other down. It's only if I have something to contribute that fosters the other person's growth. So we really create this safe container. And once one guy starts to open up, and the next guy, it gives them permission.
Yeah. Right. You need one guy to do it and see, okay, nothing bad happened.
That's right.
And then you know that there's going to be support, that it's a safe. That's all we want. We want safety. I say all the time that when anyone who's been through stuff is always told you're so strong. And I get that all the time. And I always say, first of all, I don't think I'm stronger than anybody. I just had to prove it. Not everyone has to prove it the way some of us do. But also it's because I never felt safe. And so I had to be strong.
That's right.
Listen, if I had a choice, I'd rather people not see me so strong. It's because I feel safe and I don't have to build that up. But I think all we really want is to feel safe, to be who we are, to think how we think, to act the way we do, to love who we love, to just walk through life who we are. And I think it's it seems like the simplest thing to ask, but it's so hard for so many of us. So I think it's fantastic that you are creating this safe space. And I think that even when I mentioned that I'm doing something on positive masculinity, there are people who are going to be like, oh, it's all positive. And then if you mention toxic, they go, oh, it's all toxic. Like it really is this polarizing thing. But again, I think that men need to be nurtured as well. And I think the thing that I find, again, with the whole toxic masculinity thing, is that a lot of times men will blame feminists and it's not the feminists that we didn't create it. We're helping. We don't want you to have to feel the pressure to be alphas. We don't want you to feel we want you to be able to be who you are. It's better to create that. And your book. So tell me about your book.
It is. Yeah.
There you go.
Masculinity Now. Actually, it's funny that you mentioned feminists, because one of the chapters in the book is how to be a masculine feminist. And actually, my wife and I the next book we're co-writing, and that's going to be the whole book is about that. Yeah, and my wife is in her doctoral program in psychology, and so we are going to co-write this because I do think that there are a lot of decent guys out there, good guys who want to have a love in their life, right? But they are afraid they're going to do it wrong. They're not sure how to be supportive. And also, one of the things I challenge men to do is what we need is more good guys to speak up and step up.
Absolutely.
This issue is that, yeah, if some guy in your work environment or whatever makes some off-color comment about either race or about women, puts people down, right? A lot of good guys won't say anything because they don't want to cause a confrontation. And with guys, if you throw a guy under the bus in front of the group, sometimes they can get, I mean, it could get physical, right? So a lot of guys are shy about that. So I actually teach the guys, here's my martial arts background. Again, I teach them a little Aikido in conversation, how you redirect the energy, but I teach them how to talk to someone about that without starting a fight. And I do think more good people need to learn skills of how to speak up and step up, but in a healthy way, not pointing your finger at them and screaming in their face, because people just shut down then. They don't.
Totally. Yeah, you get defensive. But I think that's a really good point that you're making, is that of course, there are good men out there, of course. But the problem is, I think people think that they're being an ally just because they don't say the bad things and they don't do the bad things.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's when a guy says, well, I've never assaulted anyone and I would, it's okay, but you don't get a parade for that. Like, that's kind of what's expected, that's just being human. Yeah, I don't disrespect. It's absolutely important to recognize that you don't do these things. Yeah. But just as you said, it's equally, if not even more important, to call it out when you see it, because I'm not going to cause the fire, but if you're seeing the fire and you're not doing anything to put it out, it's going to do just as much damage. So you need to learn. We need people to speak up. And I think it's really important that even when you say male feminist, I know I've seen through social media that sometimes when a man will call himself that, there are other men who are like, oh, he's just trying to get in with the girl. He's just trying to. So there's that's the tough. And then look, I think some are. I think that some like to play the male. It's a tough thing. It is. But I think like anything, when it comes to anything that's new, and there's a lot of new stuff being thrown at people these days, there is that fear of doing the wrong thing or overstepping or saying too much as an ally. Right. But I think better to say too much and have someone say, nah, back up a bit, or, oh, you got that wrong, and just be open to it and say, okay, thanks, than to not say anything at all.
Yes, that's so true. What was that? What's that old quote? It was around the Holocaust. If you don't stand up when they come for the Polish people, then they come for the gays, and you didn't stand up, then they come next time.
Come for you, and no one's there.
Yeah. So we have to remember that we live in community together. And all of our communities are healthier if we're all thriving. And the other thing I tell the guys, this helps get them on board too, because this changes their thinking. If we're really secure in who we are, it takes nothing from us to support and lift women up. If you're secure in who you are, you can lift others up. It's the insecure person that feels threatened by lifting someone else up.
Absolutely. When did you start your organization?
4.5 years ago. Yeah. I started the Positive Masculinity, and we started the discussion group first. And then about a year later, we applied for our state nonprofit status. And then it's just grown and grown. And now we teach workshops, and then the book. And the book it's so wild, because once you put that out there, the response it's been the number one new release in 5 categories in just 3 months, including men's health, gender studies, sociology. Yeah, it's like really done well. And who would have thought? It's so interesting, a trans man talking about masculinity, right? Who would have thought? Because I was like, some people are going to say, the nerve of this guy. Who does he think he is?
And people will.
and that's there's always going to be some of those people, and that's okay. But I've had such an interesting study of gender throughout my life, and watching how people react to you. And I would say 3 different phases of gender I've gone through. Walking the world is what the world viewed as female. Then when you start transition, for the first couple of years, you're in an in-between category where people aren't sure which box to put you in, right? You don't come out like this in a week. And now I'm on this other side where I, quote, pass, as they would say. And some of that is the luck of your genetics, and some of it is having access to good medical care. Now I see a total different side of things. Now, if I walk into a restaurant, I'm looked at as a middle-aged businessman, and a woman could have been standing there waiting longer than me. And this has happened to me several times, and they'll walk right past her and come to me and ask if I'm ready to be seated.
Wow.
Because of my life experience, I see that.
You feel it, you know it. Yeah.
I lived it. I know, right? So I will say, excuse me, she was here waiting when I walked in. And they will go, oh, and the woman always looks at me like, what planet did you come from? Because most guys don't even, it's not on their radar.
Wow.
They're not aware of it.
It's those little microaggressions that people don't, that are part of our everyday that people don't see that you will.
Yeah. And on the other hand, I've had some interesting things that have really hurt my heart on this side of it. Like, I spent my life, because of my martial arts training, empowering women. I've traveled the world teaching self-defense, teaching women how to protect themselves. I've taught in women's shelters, women's prisons. I've always had a heart to help, people feel empowered that they can take care of themselves. And then the first time I was walking down the street in the evening by myself, and a woman was walking the other way, and she didn't know my story. She just knew she was walking by herself, and she sees a guy, and she crosses the street because she feels safe on the other side. And that just hit me like a ton of bricks with my life experience. Oh my God, wow.
You want to be like, no, you're okay.
Yeah, exactly. I would do whatever to protect you.
Oh. See, that's another thing, though. You get that, because I know I've had this discussion with so many women about how I walk down the street all the time, and I have a tendency, I dance, I listen to music, and I dance down the street. And I know sometimes I can do it really freely. And sometimes I know I have to be very aware of my surroundings. I have to be very aware. And I was just talking about this with the women last night about how sometimes I'll pass somebody and I don't have to look back. I'll pass the guy. It doesn't matter how big he is. And I know I'm safe. There's something in my gut. And then there's another time I'll pass and I'll think, wait a beat, and then turn around and make sure they're not coming back. There's just something. And I think that there are a lot of men, good men, who don't understand that. It's not that we think you're all bad. It's that some can be. And we have to protect ourselves. It's not a criticism of you. You are not taking that personally. You know, that's just the reality.
I do that when I teach self-defense. The hard thing, and I tell guys this, I have studied this from teaching self-defense all these years. The number one predator to women is men. It's just the truth. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there are good guys out there, but those few that are bad, they do really bad things. And we have to step up. That's another reason why we speak out and step up, because a man that's a predator doesn't just start by attacking women. They start with these microaggressions and saying nasty things about women, and builds up in them. And so that's where it's time to speak up. I think good people all over the world in a lot of ways need to speak up about the climate, about race, about just acceptance of people that are different. It's time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because it's not the whole, I tolerate it so I'm a good person. It's like, no, you tolerate a headache. That's not what it is. Again, it's just making the world safe. For whether, even if you don't have to understand everything or how everyone lives. It's impossible, especially depending on where you were born and your upbringing. We can't, but it's okay to be like, I don't get it, but that's okay. As long as you're okay. As long as you're not hurting anybody. By not letting me be me, you're hurting me. And that's the difference, right? My lifestyle isn't going to hurt you. You're not letting me live my life. That hurts me. So why is that better?
That's right. There's a great quote from the Dalai Lama. He said, I wish everybody would help at least one person, but if you can't help them, at least don't hurt them.
Don't hurt them.
Yeah.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah. It's so powerful.
Yeah. Especially for the environment today that we're living in. I think when so many rights are being taken away from people, I don't get it. Everybody having rights doesn't hurt other people that have rights. It's such an odd thing.
I try to talk to the guys about is, you mentioned it earlier, is white male privilege. I try to talk to the guys about the fact that you do have privilege. We do have privilege. And that's not a bad thing. It's not like we chose to be born white. We had no choice in it, right? Mm-hmm. Saying you're bad because you were born white. But we want people to realize their privilege, and then you can understand how you can use it to help others. But you first have to acknowledge you have it to help others with it.
I have sons, and I spoke to them at the very young about white privilege. And I think, again, when I was growing up in the 70s, privilege meant wealth. And I think that's what people get confused. So when you hear somebody's privilege, you think they were born with a silver spoon. So when somebody is being told, oh, you've got white privilege, and they're struggling in life, they think, no, I don't. And it's a thing. It's not, it doesn't mean that your life is going to be easy at all. You could struggle and have such hardship. It just means that your race isn't going to be one of those things that is going to add to your turn. That's one thing that you don't have to worry about. You could have a lot of, no one's saying it'll be easy, but that's one thing. Understand that you have a step up.
Yeah. Yes. You know? And there's all kinds of privilege. I know even as a trans person, I have white privilege. I'm in a very marginalized community in one way, being trans, but I have white privilege. I also have the privilege that I have a good education. I had a college degree before I transitioned. There's a lot of disparity in the trans community with career and education. And I have privilege.
I didn't even know that. Interesting.
Yeah. So there's different ways we have privilege, and we just need to understand it. Right. Yeah. And then we can use it.
So you started your program about 4.5 years ago. What was that made you say, this needs to happen? This isn't, there was a void. What was it that, I'm sure it's been brewing for a long time, but what was the catalyst that was like, okay, I'm going to do this now?
I got a download from the universe. So I was watching the Me Too movement at its height, and I didn't see many men involved in the conversation, except the few guys that were screaming, you're trying to take our manhood away and ruin masculinity and that kind of guy. And I wasn't interested in what they had to say, right? So I thought, why aren't more men being a part of this and realizing how the traditional masculine model has also limited us and hurt us in a lot of ways, and being a part of helping create a healthier way forward for all of us. And so that's when I got this, I call it a vision, a download, whatever, where I saw all these different types of masculine people. I call it masculinities because there's more than one way to be masculine, more than one way to be feminine. There's a lot of variation there. When I teach gender, I say you've got The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, and you've got Fred Rogers. Those are very different forms of masculinity, yet they're both valid forms of masculinity. It's the same thing with femininity. You have quite the big spectrum of it. So I just saw all these different types of masculine people together, different ages, different backgrounds, education levels, coming together to have real conversation around this and to work together to create something healthier for all of us. How would that be? So then I called a friend of mine who I knew had experienced toxic masculinity growing up. He grew up with a toxic father, very toxic father. And him and I had talked about it because we were good friends and had done activist work together. And I said, hey, I got this crazy idea. What do you think about this? And I want to know if you would be willing to start this group with me. And he heard my idea, and then he's, hell yes, we need that. He grew up a Kinsey Scale 6 gay guy, and his father, and he became a state track champion. And his father belittled him all the time and said he would never go and support him in a track meet because he told him it wasn't a man enough sport. Because he wasn't hitting anyone. He flat out told him.
Wow.
Yeah, he wanted me to play football or box or something like that. He wanted me to be, violent. And that's just not who Drew was. So Drew started this with me, my good friend. And then he passed away a little over a year ago, unfortunately, of cancer. And I miss him. I hope he's looking down and seeing the book and seeing the work go on. And so I dedicated the book to our friendship. To him.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's pretty powerful. I mean, you said exactly what you're doing is, it's like I said at the beginning, details are different, but there are so many themes that resonate with so many of us. And the two of us, it's the communication part. We have to talk. And I always say, as important as it is to talk about what we're thinking, what we're feeling, it's so important to listen to other people, to try and understand someone else's journey and see that we're really not that different.
That's right.
Right from the outside, we look at, but we're really not. And I really think it's important that, again, just the spin of your organization, of your book, the positive masculinity. I think that's what we need more of. And I think that we need to put it out there that that's what it's about. It's about positivity. I say that, but I'm such not a fan of toxic positivity. So that's not what I'm talking about. Anyone who's listening and knows me. But I think we need, as I keep saying, everyone to feel safe, everyone to feel supported. And I'm going to put in the show notes your organization, but say it again loud for everybody where they can reach you.
PositiveMasculinityNow.org. Besides our discussion group, we also teach workshops. Like I teach a workshop every month virtually, but I also go to corporations and teach workshops. and groups, even faith communities, and we teach these workshops. I have been contracted by police departments to come in and teach gender 101.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, I've even taught to the US Border Patrol because there
Ooh.
just needs to be more of an understanding and get people. What I do in this book is I get all people to go back and examine their socialization around gender and how it's limited you. I'll tell you just a quick story about one of my black belts. She was a young child and wanted to take martial arts. She was also born in the 60s. Her parents told her it wasn't for girls. So they wouldn't sign her up for martial arts class. So when she left home and went away to college, her college offered a class. She started there. She ends up later at my dojo in Florida, and she becomes this amazing martial artist. She's just very natural at it and becomes a really great now martial arts teacher. If she would have listened to that social conditioning from her parents, that's not for girls, and just shut that and accepted that message, she'd have never known this.
Mm-hmm.
She'd have never experienced it. Right? This is the idea of the limiting gender messages that a lot of us grew up with, and some people still get, depending on your community and your family, and that they limit us. And we just need to, we have the power as conscious adults to create our own way.
That's as parents too. You're not supposed to have children to be little versions of you. You're supposed to have them to see who they're going to be and encourage them to be whoever they're going to be, whoever
That's right.
that is.
Yeah.
So that's key. Okay, thank you so much for chatting with me. I mean, this is, again, I'm like, there's so much to talk, about. So I really appreciate this. And positivemasculinity.now.org. So thank you for chatting with me today, Max.
Thank you, Marcy. Yeah, it's been fun.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. And I will see you next week on How to Ruin Your Own Reputation.